Breaking news from the White House just sent shockwaves through the global economy. President Trump has officially signed a new round of tariffs on Mexican imports. The decision, which had been looming for months, is now set in stone. But what does this mean for the U.S.? How will it affect the millions of people relying on products flowing from Mexico every day? Please subscribe to our channel if you're enjoying the move. Marks a new chapter in an already tense trade relationship between the two nations. The tariffs are designed to force Mexico into compliance with U.S. trade demands, but it's not a simple strategy. These tariffs aren't just about numbers on a page. They're about real people, businesses, and entire industries that will feel the pressure. For decades, the U.S. has depended on Mexico for a steady stream of auto parts and components, everything from wiring harnesses to entire engine assemblies. But now, with these tariffs in place, the future of this partnership is in jeopardy. It's a gamble that could change the way both countries interact economically. And as we'll see, Mexico isn't just taking it lying down. Get ready. This trade war is about to get a lot more intense. Stay tuned as we break down how Mexico is responding to this bold move. Just when you thought things couldn't get any more intense, Mexico has fired back with a stunning counterstrike. After President Trump's move to slap tariffs on Mexican imports, the Mexican government wasted no time making its own move. And this one is aimed squarely at one of the most important industries in the United States, the auto sector. Mexico has decided to halt the export of vital auto parts to the U.S. This isn't just a minor disruption, it's a full-on attack that could bring American car manufacturing to its knees. For decades, U.S. automakers have relied on Mexico's factories to supply critical components, from wiring harnesses and transmissions to entire engine assemblies. Without these parts, the entire U.S. auto production line grinds to a halt. This move isn't a knee-jerk reaction. It's a calculated blow to force the U.S. to rethink its approach. By cutting off these parts, Mexico is sending a clear message: don't mess with our economy. The stakes have never been higher, and the consequences of this economic standoff could ripple across the global market. In the next few minutes, we'll look at what this bold move means for both countries. How will U.S. automakers respond? And what's next in this escalating trade war? Stick with us. You won't want to miss the fallout from this high-stakes counterstrike. The relationship between the U.S. and Mexico in car manufacturing didn't happen overnight. It's the result of decades of collaboration and mutual benefit. Over the years, American car companies have built a deep reliance on Mexico's factories to provide critical components that are essential for vehicle production. Mexico became a key player due to its low labor costs, modernized infrastructure, and its proximity to the United States. These advantages made it an ideal partner for U.S. automakers looking to streamline production and keep costs down. What started as a simple outsourcing arrangement quickly evolved into a cornerstone of the U.S. auto industry today. Factories in Mexico supply a wide range of parts, from engine components and transmissions to wiring harnesses and airbags. In fact, these parts are so integral to the production process that many U.S. assembly plants rely on a just-in-time system, meaning parts arrive daily, just when they're needed, keeping production lines running smoothly. This setup has made it almost impossible for U.S. manufacturers to switch suppliers quickly. Over time, automakers like Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis have built operations in both countries, making the partnership nearly inseparable. But with Mexico now cutting off the supply of parts, the consequences for the U.S. auto industry could be catastrophic. Mexico's decision to cut off the flow of essential car parts to the U.S. is not just a minor disruption, it's a devastating blow to the heart of the American auto industry. This single act could send shockwaves through factories, dealerships, and supply chains across the country. So, what's really at risk? For starters, it's not just about a few missing pieces. The U.S. auto industry runs on a finely tuned system of parts arriving from Mexico daily, a method known as just-in-time manufacturing. Without these parts, things like wiring harnesses, transmissions, and engine components, production lines will grind to a halt. Assembly plants in Michigan, Ohio, and Kentucky that rely heavily on these imports will have no choice but to shut down. Thousands of workers face the threat of layoffs, and dealerships that have already been struggling with inventory shortages will be hit even harder. New car production will come to a screeching halt, and used car prices, already soaring, will skyrocket even further. The effects won't stop at the auto sector. Industries closely linked to car manufacturing, like steel, electronics, and logistics, will also feel the pain. This isn't just a supply chain issue. It's a threat to the very foundation of the U.S. economy, and the fallout could be felt for years. The just-in-time JA manufacturing model has been the backbone of the U.S. auto industry for decades. In simple terms, it means that parts are delivered exactly when they are needed on the assembly line. No sooner, no later. This system minimizes waste and maximizes efficiency, helping manufacturers keep costs low and production fast. It sounds ideal, right? But here's the catch. It's incredibly fragile. With GIT, U.S. automakers rely on a steady, uninterrupted flow of parts coming from suppliers around the world, especially from Mexico. Components like engines, wiring harnesses, and transmissions must arrive on time for the production line to keep moving. If one part is missing, the whole operation stalls. And that's exactly what happens when Mexico cuts off its exports. The system works well in normal circumstances, but any disruption, like this one, can cause chaos. There's no backup plan in place to quickly replace parts that were supposed to arrive today. Factories can't just shift to alternative suppliers overnight. The cost of switching suppliers, especially for highly specialized parts, would take years and billions of dollars in investment. This delicate web of supply and demand, while efficient, leaves the U.S. auto industry highly vulnerable. A single disruption can bring the entire manufacturing process to a halt, and the consequences ripple far beyond the factories. With Mexico's decision to cut off critical auto parts, assembly plants across the U.S. are on the brink of shutting down. The impact is immediate and far-reaching. The assembly lines, which rely on a precise flow of parts from Mexico, will come to a screeching halt. Factories that were once buzzing with activity are now left idle, unable to produce a single car. For automakers like Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis, this means a massive disruption in production. These companies operate on tight schedules and slim profit margins, and any pause in production translates into millions of dollars in lost revenue every single day. And with the parts they need no longer arriving from Mexico, the situation becomes even worse. Dealerships, already grappling with low inventory, face a complete drying up of new cars to sell. Consumers who were already dealing with price hikes and limited options will be hit even harder. Used car prices are expected to skyrocket as people scramble to find alternatives, but even that market will be affected by the reduced supply of new vehicles. The most devastating effect, however, is on the workers. Thousands of assembly line workers, engineers, and supply chain employees face layoffs and furloughs as production grinds to a halt. Entire communities that depend on these factories for their livelihoods are now left in uncertainty, unsure when or if the industry will ever recover from this blow. The moment Mexico pulled the trigger on halting auto parts exports, the financial markets reacted with panic. Automakers' stocks, which had already been under pressure from the looming trade tensions, began to plummet. Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis, each of which relies heavily on the steady flow of parts from Mexico, saw their stock prices drop sharply. Investors who were already nervous about the economic fallout from Trump's tariffs now faced a reality where major U.S. car manufacturers were at risk of grinding to a halt. The effects weren't limited to just the auto companies. The ripple effects spread quickly, causing a sell-off in related sectors like steel, electronics, and logistics, all of which depend on the auto industry. Companies that were once seen as stable suddenly became uncertain, and this uncertainty sent waves through Wall Street. But the immediate market reaction is just the tip of the iceberg. In the long term, prolonged production stoppages could damage investor confidence, leading to more volatility in the markets. Automakers that can't maintain a steady production schedule will find it difficult to meet demand, which means profits will be down for a long time. If the trade war drags on, the damage could affect the broader economy, leading to layoffs, economic slowdowns, and even a potential recession. In short, this isn't just a bump in the road for the financial sector, it's a full-blown economic shockwave that could take years to recover from. Mexico has something the U.S. simply can't afford to lose, a deeply interconnected economic relationship that's been built over decades. While tariffs are meant to create leverage in trade wars, Mexico's real power lies in its position within the U.S. supply chain, especially in the auto industry. For years, American car manufacturers have relied on Mexico not just as a supplier, but as a critical partner. From engine components to wiring harnesses, the parts flowing from Mexico are integral to keeping production lines running. Shutting off that flow is not something the U.S. can just walk away from without severe consequences. This is not a relationship that can be easily undone or replaced with other suppliers. The problem for the U.S. is that finding alternatives to Mexico would take years, not months. Moving production to other countries or even back to the U.S. would require billions of dollars in investment. It's not just about replacing parts. It's about the infrastructure, expertise, and supply chain networks that Mexico has built over time. Even if U.S. manufacturers wanted to stop relying on Mexico, they wouldn't have a viable alternative in the short term. Mexico knows it holds a powerful card. By retaliating with a targeted strike at the heart of U.S. car manufacturing, Mexico has made it clear that the trade war isn't just about tariffs, it's about the deep, irreplaceable bonds that have shaped the economies of both countries. The U.S. is stuck, and Mexico knows it. The political fallout from Mexico's counterstrike is already hitting home for American auto workers, and the impact is only going to grow. Thousands of workers, many of whom supported Trump's America First agenda, are now facing the very real threat of layoffs as production lines come to a halt. Factories across Michigan, Ohio, and Kentucky are shuttering, leaving communities that depend on these plants in a state of uncertainty. Unions, which have long been a powerful force in the auto industry, are feeling the pressure too. They're voicing their anger over the economic fallout, demanding immediate action from the government. For these workers, it's not just about the loss of a paycheck, it's about the survival of an entire industry that has been the backbone of their livelihoods for generations. As jobs are put at risk, the political implications for Trump's administration grow increasingly dire. Trump's promise to protect American jobs is now being put to the test. The very workers he claimed to fight for are suffering the consequences of his tariff policies. If these job losses continue, unions will ramp up pressure on the administration, calling for a reversal of the tariffs. The situation is becoming a political nightmare for Trump as his base of working-class supporters begins to feel the sting of the trade war he started. The stakes are higher than ever, and the pressure on the White House is mounting. With workers on one side and powerful unions demanding change, the political fallout could become a defining issue for Trump's presidency. Mexico's response to the trade war isn't just a defensive move, it's part of a broader strategy to position itself as a major player in global trade. Over the past few years, Mexico has been quietly strengthening its economic ties with countries beyond the United States. By forging strategic partnerships with China, the European Union, and other countries in South America, Mexico has reduced its reliance on the U.S. and made itself a formidable force in this trade conflict. While the U.S. has traditionally viewed Mexico as its trade partner in North America, Mexico has been expanding its horizons. Its growing relationship with China is especially important. As the U.S. and China clash over tariffs, Mexico has been able to take advantage of new opportunities to trade with the world's second-largest economy. Similarly, its trade agreements with the EU and other regions are giving Mexico a broader base for economic growth. In essence, Mexico is no longer just a subordinate partner in the U.S. trade sphere. It's carving out its own place on the world stage, building relationships that allow it to withstand pressure from the U.S. In fact, Mexico's ability to diversify its trade relationships makes it less vulnerable to U.S. threats, which only strengthens its negotiating position in the ongoing battle for global trade supremacy. This isn't just about a trade war with the U.S., it's about Mexico's strategic move to secure its future in a changing global economy. And as we'll see, this new global outlook could shape future trade wars and global economic relations for years to come. Amid the chaos caused by Mexico's counterstrike, there's a potential silver lining that could transform the U.S. auto industry. As production lines grind to a halt and the threat of further disruptions looms, companies are starting to turn to a long-predicted solution: automation. The dependence on labor, especially from international supply chains, has always been a vulnerability for U.S. automakers. The current crisis is forcing companies to rethink their reliance on human workers and overseas suppliers. With the need for a more resilient, self-sustaining manufacturing model, automakers are accelerating their investment in robotics and artificial intelligence. Automation in the auto industry isn't a new concept, but it's about to get a major boost. Companies are ramping up efforts to introduce robots, AI, and other automated systems to streamline production and reduce their reliance on workers and foreign parts. While it may take time to fully implement, the crisis is pushing companies to make this shift sooner than they had planned. As the auto industry faces production shutdowns, American consumers are feeling the pressure. With a halt in new car production, prices for new vehicles are set to skyrocket. Dealerships are already struggling with low inventory, and the shortage of new cars will only make things worse. Used car prices, which had recently started to decline, will surge as more people turn to secondhand vehicles. Options for consumers will become increasingly scarce, making it harder for many to afford a vehicle. This crisis is not just an industry issue, it's one that directly impacts everyday Americans. The fallout from this trade conflict could reshape the future of U.S.-Mexico relations in ways we've never seen before. Both countries are locked in a delicate dance, trying to balance political pressure, economic interests, and the global market. The disruptions caused by this crisis are forcing leaders to reconsider their long-term trade strategies. Will the U.S. continue to rely on Mexico for critical manufacturing, or will it shift toward more self-sustained domestic production? As both sides wrestle with their next move, one thing is clear. This standoff has changed the rules of the game, and the outcome could set the tone for future trade wars worldwide.